How's it going, people? Jack here, reporting from the decrepit remains of Kodaku or something. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Where has this been for the last 3 to almost a month? And in all honesty, I have no particularly good excuse for this reaction being so late, beside the fact that I was waiting for this to hit a mill. And then I just did not have the time to sit down and watch a 2-hour-long video about Warhammer. I know, it sounds stupid because I've done worse. It sounds stupid literally coming from a guy who once had a Warhammer 40k podcast. It is dumb, but yeah, it is what it is. But hey, much like the returning, better late than never. And in this case, I will say that I was there. I was there when Horus slew the Emperor. And I was also there when Brigadier General Bricky got legs. Like, what is this? It's been years now. And for anybody who has watched the original will of course know that Bricky had a running thing there with replacing his upper torso, at his lower body, with different extremities from characters in the 40k universe. But yeah, this time he comes to us as himself, and a lot more knowledgeable person who has not just gotten very deep into the Warhammer lore, has participated in some incredible tournaments, and also has one of the funniest podcasts out there, Adeptus Ridiculous. So, that being said, enough of the preamble. Let's get into today's video, for which of course, please do make sure to go and subscribe to Bricky's channel, and without further ado, let's get into this.
In the kind brightness of the far past, there was no war. Our galaxy was, for a long time, fairly empty and quiet. The first known species to appear during this time are known only as the Old Ones, cosmic entities that traveled across the galaxy with ease and seeded life through the stars.
Hell yeah.
Shortly thereafter, a new species began to arise. The Necron tier. Evolving under the harshness of a devastatingly powerful star, the short-lived and irradiated Necron tier try to find the secret to eternal life and to be freed from their terrible existence.
Their fleshy bodies.
Through the stars, they find the Old Ones and they plead to them to share the secrets of the universe and grant them purchase from their short and painful existence.
And they received it. Not quite in the form that they expected, but they received it.
The Old Ones respond with a lol and a lamau, and with their immense power, they force them back to their homeworld. The Necron tier, filled with rage and hatred, make it their duty to get revenge on the Old Ones. A revenge that would come swiftly as a chance encounter with other gods gave them a solution. These other gods were known as the Khorne, a race of highly powerful star-consuming entities. Do not fear, young mortals,
eating some for breakfast.
We, the Khorne, will provide you with the immortality you seek. Come now, won't you shake a poor sinner's hand?
Oh my god, this is so good. After I just watched the movie Sinners, which literally just gave me hope back into the movie industry. And speaking of course in hyperbole here, there are still cases of very, very good movies out there. Of course, a lot of them still relinquished to like the indie department, much like video game. But of course, the movie has a lot of double entendre and the beautiful bit of you need to invite the occult, right? The demon into your household, and of course the southern myths of how to communicate with, such entities. Which of course is very much what happened here. But in the far past, basically the Necrons were like, they came to us as gods. But we as fools took them at their words. I think it's quite literally a quote.
Quoted from Mephetron, the Deceiver. The Necron tier accepted the Khorne's offer of immortality, but believe it or not, this turned out to be a ruse. A trick. The Khorne crafted gigantic furnaces and began the process of biotransference.
Oh, yeah.
The Necron tier willingly walked line by line into the furnace engines made by gods who devour stars and had their souls consumed instead. The short-lived, irradiated, and cancer-inflicted race of the Necron tier ceased to be, and the immortal, soulless Necrons remained. Now backed by the immense power of the C'tan, the Necrons rally against the Old Ones, and the bitter conflict in the stars at this time is known as the War in Heaven. Despite creating various races and entities to aid them in this battle, the Old Ones are overwhelmed and eradicated down to the last.
One of the things that always strikes me as wonderful with 40k and will remain so is that you have this wonderful dichotomy of the utilization of verbiage that tend to be allegorical, right? As for example, the souls and heaven and stuff like that. But they are quite literally things. And the depiction of heaven, of course, here is in like celestial speaking, right? Stars, an over-encompassing intergalactic battle, whereas the soul is actually a physical thing.
Due to the sheer power of the C'tan, fat off the souls of the Necron tier, and with an army of unthinkable robotic slaves at their behest. However, the C'tan are greedy, spiteful gods, and when there was no foe worth killing, they turn on each other. The Necrons then put their sights towards the C'tan and lay waste to them, securing their freedom. The once subservient Necrons now control their former masters. Worn out and weakened by these wars, the Necrons, under their leader Zarek, the Silent King, lie dormant, with a plan to eventually wake and reclaim control over the galaxy. Over millions of years, empires rise and they fall. The species created by the Old Ones have footholds over the galaxy, but on a pale blue dot in the thick of all this conflict, humanity begins to evolve.
There are things in 40k that I find to be extremely scary. I know that furthermore in this video, there certainly will be a mention of chaos. There will be the immorality and objectively heinous acts of the Drukhari, aka the Dark Elves. There will be such things as what humanity does themselves and or the brutality of the Tyranids hordes. That being said, what is truly scary is the Necrons. Whether we're talking about the Silent King or Imhotep the Stormlord, there are things that they can do that can literally destroy the universe so quickly. Yet, they wait. They bide their time. And I think that is, at least in recent books, that has been an aspect that has been emphasized a bit more. And I can't wait to see what the next movie is going to be, because they have amassed quite a lot of powers.
For the most part, the basic path of humanity's evolution remains the same as it is now for almost 15,000 years.
Oh yeah.
Right now, in the 21st century, this is canon. You, right now, Twitch streamer reacting to this video, you existed at a point in the Warhammer universe. But with time, humanity's ambition and the power of their technology becomes unmatched, and the golden age of expansion begins. Humanity starts to branch out through the stars with powerful tools used for agriculture, mining, and expansion. Some branches of humanity would eventually settle far away from Earth itself, and around this time, the psychic ability of humans are greatly expanded, and what we begin to know as psykers appear. But despite all the progress, things would begin to collapse. The machines created to aid humanity would turn on them in M23, an event known as the Cybernetic Revolt, and trade would begin to collapse due to the immaterial warp, aka actual hell, beginning to cause ruptures in space and time. These warp stones would separate
son of a bitch, Cleveland, Ohio,
humanity, and this would be what is known as the Age of Strife. The warp, a sea of souls, storing all thought, emotion, and the souls of those who have passed on, begin fluctuating into something terrible, as far on the horizon, something horrendous was brewing. You see, the warp isn't just a random assortment of chaotic energy. It is fairly well organized, thanks to those living in the galaxy. The warp itself acts as an afterlife of sorts, and the actions of the innumerable amount of creatures who live in the galaxy have manifested a pantheon of organized entities known as the Forces of Chaos. At their helm are three major entities, Khorne, Nurgle, and Tzeentch, however, a fourth one Slaanesh was about to be born. The
Slaanesh.
ancient Eldar were one of the first species created by the Old Ones, and due to their extreme and unbridled excess, the birthing of Slaanesh tore a hole in the galaxy.
Oh my god. Old Eldari art. Damn. Games Workshop were truly playing into the Jester art, didn't they? Yikes.
And forever split the Eldar into those of the Craftworld, who sought to bring their species back together, and those of the Drukhari, who wished to continue what caused the birth of Slaanesh in the first place. The birthing of this fourth Chaos God settled the warp storms of the Imperium and ended the age of strife, but humanity was still fractured. So one man revealed himself and spearheaded an immense attempt to reunite all the fractured pieces of humanity. That man was the Emperor of Mankind. After reclaiming the nearly destroyed Earth, the Emperor embarked on the Unification Wars to unite humanity under the banner of the Imperium of Man. However, due to the very long and devastating impact of the Age of Strife, humanity as we know it is not the same. To reconquer Earth, the Emperor would need more than mere men. Great beings, known as the Thunder Warriors, were recruited by the Emperor to reclaim the Earth with ease. But these warriors are a blunt tool and had, overstayed their welcome.
They were freaking nuked. Ems was like, yeah, you serve your purpose, boy. Time to hit the beds. And by beds, I mean sending you 6 feet under. He hunted them down. There are few who survived, who lived to tell the tale. And was some of the first to let us know just how heinous this dude truly is. Not a good dad.
He would need something better, and that solution would be known as the Space Marines. Superhuman soldiers that will have the skill and cunning exponentially greater than the mortal man. These new warriors would be commanded by an elite group of his very own sons known as the Primarchs. Unfortunately though, Daddy didn't charge the baby monitor, and his 18 sons would be stolen by the forces of chaos and scattered across the galaxy. This would begin the Great Crusade, a monumental task to take back the stars in the name of humanity and reclaim the lost Primarch sons. However, he would need the fires of industry to make this happen. Looking to the distant cousins of Mars, the Emperor signed a treaty with the technologically irradiated hellscape of the Red Planet and allowed the cult of the machine god, the Mechanicum, to supply his crusade.
That was a shot of Gothic Armada 2. Yes. No, Gothic Armada 1. I think it is Belisarius Cole that crawls out of that Thunderhawk. And he's just nasty. Yeah, he's gonna explain the Legions of Mars, which they are just far beyond being human-like anymore. They are disgusting.
While Space Marines were the tip of the spear, their numbers paled to the vast might of the Imperial Army and Navy. The Astra Militarum and their seemingly endless numbers make up the bulk of the fighting force for humanity, supplied by the intelligence and prowess of various agents of the Imperium, such as rogue traders and assassins. Due to the lack of connectivity between the worlds, what a society had become over thousands of years became mysterious and varied. Tools once used for harvesting and agriculture now are being used as machines of war in the form of Imperial Knights. Some of these fractures of humanity would even be changed further and become unrecognizable to the average human, with differences in size, skin color, appendages, cat ears sometimes. Some would go so far to become their own galactic societies, like the miners of the galactic core and their immense supercomputers.
Oh man, don't make fun of our short kings, man. Compressed as well.
Forming the Leagues of Votan. After an incredible amount of effort and books, the lost sons of the Emperor would be reunited, and the Imperium of Man would be firmly established. This, however, would not last. Be it intentional or accidental, the Emperor would not reveal to his sons the true nature of the galaxy and the terrors of the warp. And this oversight would result in one of the most impactful wars in humanity's history. The favorite son of the Emperor, Horus, would fall to the powers of chaos and turn on his father. This betrayal, this backstabbing, this heresy, this horus heresy would result in a split in the Imperium with devastating consequences. Half of the Emperor's loyal sons would fall to chaos and become the Chaos Space Marines, along with the forces of the Dark Mechanicum and the Chaos Knights. The conflict would result in the absolute obliteration of Horus and the physical death of the Emperor himself. The near-dead body of the Emperor would be placed on the Golden Throne to serve as a beacon of humanity and allow for the continued ability to travel the stars, protected by his most loyal, the Adeptus Custodes. The Imperium would be vulnerable during this age of rebirth, and Terra would find itself under siege by one of the most formidable species in the galaxy, the Orcs. As time went on and memories of the Emperor's vision began to fade, the Emperor would become less of a head of state and more of a religious figure. And the Imperium would change to reflect this. The leadership on a planet would be at the behest of the High Lords of Terra, and their actions would be courtesy of the incomparable power and authority of the Inquisition. The zealots of the Imperium would intensify and create a brand new era known as the Age of Apostasy. And this ecclesiarchal command of the Imperium would end up with one of the strongest fighting forces of Terra, the Adeptus Sororitas. Over time, this age would come to pass, and we would approach the 40th millennium of Warhammer 40,000.
Fucking hit them with it, Bricky!
Which, you guessed it, would come with its own form of problems. A primitive species once found during a recon mission would be able to evolve in relative secrecy for 6,000 years, becoming a highly advanced coalition of aliens known as the Tau Empire. And if the threats of the galaxy weren't bad enough, there are threats from outside the galaxy. As a monster has begun to wrap its tendrils around the Milky Way, the Tyranids, monsters that serve a psychic hive mind and present tactics previously unseen in the Milky Way. Be it a direct assault with their monstrous bug-like presence or through the more covert gene stealer cults, the presence of yet another threat in the galaxy is proving to be overwhelming to the Imperium. In the 41st millennium, there is no peace among the stars. At any point, your life can and will be threatened by the Xenos races uncountable, or by the arch enemy of chaos within, or by the decroded terror that is the Imperium itself. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. Forget the power of technology and science, or the safety of promise and understanding.
Here it comes!
For in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.
Absolute cinema. Oh shit, it's a part 1. Wait a minute. Wait. I did not even read. See, children, this is the importance of reading. And I don't think that if we continue with this pace, that we are gonna end up finishing this damn thing.
A fantastic job once again, Mr. Kurz, the Night Haunter himself.
Oh my god, Nostramo.
Oh, didn't you love that, my faithful audience? Once again, we have another criminal over the course of 6 hours, break every single bone in his body. And with that, once again, our glorious leader has brought the crime rate to 0%. Always brought to you here on Nostramo News. I'm your host, Bricky. Thank you once again for joining us.
Okay, so for people who might not understand the joke there, Nostramo is... Nostramo was an extremely gang-ridden world wherein Conrad Kurz, Space Batman, also the leader of the Night Lords, was dropped into, and he would reduce crime by committing a lot of crime there, and inevitably ended up turning the whole thing into, well, what Absolute Batman would do. Absolute Batman, for those who do not know, is this new rendition of Batman that is super buff. That's kind of how Conrad Kurz is. He also has future sight and a shit ton of assortment, but the whole planet is like drenched in darkness, right? Never seen the sun. It's like London on steroid.
I was eating a biscuit the other day, and I suddenly thought, fuck this biscuit. You know? I don't want a bourbon cream. Fuck you, you crunchy fucking cream-filled prick. Fuck off back to your biscuit tin.
So him doing this bit of Nostramo in black and white is wild.
Our top stories for tonight. The weather forecast appears to be rainy with extra dark, so make sure you pack those extra batteries for your lamp packs. And of course, let's not forget the fantastic gang violence problem we're currently having. Oh, I'm sorry, what's that? Oh, right.
Not having.
It's gone. It's looking to be a chilly one tonight as well, so make sure your skin capes are nice and tight. Wait.
Oh.
No. Adamantium reserves have tripled?
So make sure your skin capes are nice and tight.
Lords are also the equivalent of like the space jihad, like they are space terrorists, and they are very well known to maim and skin people alive. Like, you know how Space Marine will wear the equivalent of a belt here, right? The Roman kind of skirt in front there? Well, for Night Lords, it's basically made of skin.
Wait, I'm sorry. Self-harm rates have gone down to 0%.
Love yourself.
The Night Haunter smiled?
Whoa.
No.
I'm sorry, what?
This could only mean one thing. It is the Nostramo's great privilege to bring some color back in your life with the brand new 3-part Gamer Supps drop exclusively on this here news network. That's right, your esteemed host Bricky, myself, is dropping a 3-part Gamer Supps release for pre-order, available now and only
Oh no.
for a couple of weeks.
Oh
Not
no.
only does it include a completely brand new artwork reskin of the sweet 6-pack flavor.
God damn, that's beautiful. It hits all the right spots. Muscle mommy, redhead. You can't do this to me.
One of the highest selling flavors in the entirety of Gamer Supps, but it also comes with the first ever all over print Gamer Supps 32-ounce jug. And if that isn't enough
That's
for you,
brutal.
if the phenomenal drink and drink holder is not enough for you, we have a desk mat to go along with it. That's right, the Herculean look of the brand new sweet 6-pack style is here. We're still looking at muscles beyond belief, but this time we're talking taste, we're talking Atlas, we're talking
Damn!
and if that wasn't enough, I, your co-host specifically, should you pre-order all 3 of these items, will personally hand sign a note for you, thanking you for supporting this network. All of this you can receive for 10% off if you go down in the description of this video and click the link, or go to gamersubs.com.
Oh my god, it's a Gamer Supps shirt.
And use code Bricky. Save 10% off with code Bricky. Bring some color back into your life and increase production across the board.
Great
for our
ad.
glorious leader, the Night
I have to give it to him.
Thank you, Gamer Supps, for sponsoring the Nostramo
Great ad.
News. And let us move on to our next scheduled program.
5 years ago, I made every Warhammer 40k faction explained. A passion project of mine for a universe that I enjoyed so much. Its main purpose was to be a drawbridge, the separation between the layman who had only ever seen the big armored blue man situated neatly next to a Wetzel's Pretzels, and then the hardcore Warhammer lore nerd. That was just too wide, and there was nothing bridging these two together.
I've got to say, looking back, that this is okay. We're objectifying people right there, but he looks a lot more healthy. I know it's a weird take, just like a random thing to drop right now, but seeing the comparison of past Bricky and new Bricky, I mean, there is an apparent difference here. I personally think it's a good one, so good on him.
Neatly next to a Wetzel's Pretzels, and then the hardcore Warhammer lore nerd. That was just too wide, and there was nothing bridging these two together. Since 2020, Warhammer has exploded in popularity thanks to COVID, quality game updates, and a few excellent video games.
Thank you, Grandpapa Nurgle, for giving us COVID.
And a couple mini-series. The sheer volume of people who have told me they have purchased miniatures due to that video alone makes me feel as if Games Workshop owes me commission.
They do.
However, that video is incomplete. I was not a casual fan, but I was also not a hardcore lore junkie. In the 5 years since that video's release, multiple channels have sprouted up, and the drawbridge between casual to the obsessed has never been wider or easier to traverse. Even I, myself, have been a part of Adeptus Ridiculous, a podcast teaching lore in a much simpler and condensed form. Needless to say, I've learned a lot. Warhammer is so much more than just Spaceman shoots big gun. It has also grown substantially from its origins, being a Warhammer fantasy spin-off just in space. Now, it is a
full-blown
black library filled with immensely deep characters, difficult themes, and even some tear-jerking stories.
This is the reason why people freaking say that I am a pre-watcher. I'm just in tune, man, with content creators. I know this shit. I spend time consuming this stuff as well. I might not be as azure as I would love to be in 40k. I have not read some of the recent books or audiobooks, mind you. I use Audible mainly for that sake, but there is so much coming out. So it's difficult to go through all of it in a concise way. So I appreciate people who, just like him, do things in this condensed manner so that you at least get to follow along.
It is a backdrop for a million stories over a million worlds, and I did not see its true depth in 2020. But now, I'd like to share what I've learned. We just had a brief summary of the world and each faction that takes place during it. And we did that because to truly understand each faction, we must understand what makes them the way they are. And to do so, we need to begin in chronological order, discussing their origins, their culture, their powers, and of course, what makes them oh so grimdark. So let's begin with the group that started it all and sing praise to the Infinite Empire.
Yes!
As mentioned before, the Necron tier were the original form of the Necrons, an alien race far away from us that lived short, painful lives due to the irradiation of their star. Normally, this would manifest as like a sort of cancer, a space cancer of sorts. The Necrons are very much inspired by the ancient Egyptian aesthetic, but unlike the windswept dunes
all of the bloody
associated
names
with it, the irradiated hellscape the Necron tier endured was far from picturesque. This also translates into their hierarchy. They are a race of nobles and peasants.
Yeah.
Most of the peasants would often live for their very short amount of time, only a couple of decades, while the nobles tended to have better care and would live a little bit longer. But
it's a beautiful thing. I very much appreciate what, to a certain degree, what Games Workshop were doing with this. Like, you have the Egyptian tradition of old, even the tomb worlds are supposed to be like indicative of how it was that the ancient Egyptians would entomb themselves in order to transfer their souls to the afterlife, right? It's crazy. Even that later on certain factions that then try to almost emulate different cultures that are not just Egyptian. Like there are literal, the red Necrons, what are they called? The ones who live off, quite literally off like a blood rage. I am immediately thinking of Necron flayed ones, but somebody is likely going to tell me that I'm wrong about that. But I do believe there is an actual Necron faction that emits a red hue, much like in the English there, but in red, and that are driven off of blood rage, similarly to the Vikings. But like, yeah, I like the thematics.
still far less than the average lifespan of a human, even today in the 21st century. The leader of the Necrons was Zarek, the Silent King. He was the one who took the deal with the Khorne and the Deceiver. Of course, he wasn't aware of the fact that they were known as the Deceiver at the time, but the whole species was blinded by hate after being debased by the Old Ones on their quest to cure their illness. The sheer pain that underwent the Necron race can't be understated, as their fear was manic. The Khorne are, of course, gods that eat stars, and when the leader of your species tells you to march into the gigantic green furnaces to ascend to immortality, you march. The scenes from these are long lines of both the peasantry and nobles clutching their loved ones in a frantic act to save their own lives. Many of them already inflicted in the late stages of the space cancer, some of them crawling into the biotransference furnaces, trying to outrace death itself.
Yeah, what choice they
without
have?
realizing death was the one who made these to begin with. What came out the other side was a soulless husk. And I say that literally. A soul is not an abstract concept like it is in our world, an immaterial version of oneself discussed and debated in religion and philosophy. No, in Warhammer, a soul is a real, tangible item of oneself. And the Khorne basically were just like to every single person who went in their furnaces. If you were a peasant, you came out a Necron warrior, and you as an individual have ceased to be. You have no mind, you have no soul, and your body, as you know it, is made of an extremely advanced mass of re-knitting living metal known as necrodermis. You cannot think for yourself, for you do not have a brain to think with. All you do now is await protocols from your overlords.
There is a shot that he's showcased in the start there, if we go back a little bit, around this point.
Underwent the Necron race can't be understated, as
this individual is Illuminasaurus, one of the higher Necrons, who actually does do the biotransference and also the transformation of the Necrons, sometimes also just straight up from humans to the machines that they are. Yeah, it can also go that way, because they experiment now on other individuals in order to, well, create bigger numbers. And this is a scene from a Warhammer Plus show called Pariah Nexus, wherein you can just see the horror of what such a transformation would do. It's not, of course, the exact same thing as the Khorne did to the Necrons, but still, you get the meaning.
And therein lies the biggest struggle. Most Necrons look to conquest the galaxy, kill the interlopers like the humans, Eldar, and orcs that scrape at a fraction of their power. But the end goal for many, including Zarek himself, is to return the souls to their bodies, to undo the horrible fate he cast upon them. This is not the interest of all. Many simply wish to rule their dynasty with an iron fist and kill all they consider unworthy. But to many others, it is to undo the decision that doomed them all. Before they can do that, there is a pest that needs exterminating. That is the fundamental understanding of the Necrons. They are so hyper advanced that their science borders on magic. They play with the fundamental aspects of reality and time. Their mastery of the physical galaxy is the strongest in the universe. Their weapons reduce people to the barest molecules, and they have devices capable of causing stars to supernova. They are unfathomably difficult to kill, as if you do fell one of their number, the living metal reknits itself and the reanimation protocols allow it to come back alive once again. They're masters of teleportation, and often killing a Necron fully will just have its consciousness translocated back to their tomb world to await reassembly. Normally they utilize large phalanxes of warriors and honorary combats, but some of them have fallen to various mind viruses. The destroyer cults are hell-bent on killing anything and everyone that lives with an overwhelming force. And then there's the flayed ones. Necrons cursed with I have no mouth and I must scream, a panic attack virus.
Okay, it was the flayed ones.
As the last laugh of Landogo, the Flayer Khorne. Slowly losing their minds, they strip apart their foes and adorn their bodies with the skin of their enemies, trying to better return to their old feelings of flesh and blood. The Necrons are a degraded version of their mighty empire, and still one of the biggest threats in the galaxy. The only thing keeping them at bay currently is their awakening sickness and their infighting with no care to the timeline. But they are coming, and slowly they plan to rid this galaxy of the vermin that inhabit it. My people shackled the stars and broke mortality when the species you sprang from had barely left the slime pools it spawned in. Oof. Our wars burned reality, and the dominion of our kings is without limit. The ground you tread on is not yours, it is ours.
Oh my days. I would have never imagined somebody using the Cambrian explosion as an insult towards humanity, but yep, a Necron did it.
The war in
that should be on the shirt. A Necron did it.
And as stated in the above quote, burned reality. Of course, souls exist in Warhammer, and in the case of the Necron tier, they were consumed by the star gods. This begs the question, however, if you were to pass on, expire, as one might put it, where would your soul go? The answer to this is the warp. In Warhammer, a soul is real. And so is hell. The afterlife, the Imperium, the Sea of Souls, the Imperium. All of these names refer to the dimension parallel to our own known as the warp. Now, the warp is not like our reality. It does not follow the classic normalcy of time and space. It is defined as the Sea of Souls, and it acts like this in a more literal way than you can realize. To imagine the warp is to imagine the sea itself. Hell is real, and you can surf on it. It has a current and can become more dangerous depending on where you go and how bad the weather is. As the Imperium is a reflection of our reality and of our souls, all thoughts, all emotions, all feeling that goes with a soul is passed on into the warp. If an entire
cue in a shot of Angron surfing on the top of a battle cruiser into the warp. It's an actual scene, like a demon lord, well, a demon primarch, mind you, surfing on the battle cruiser.
Planet decides it's going to engage in a blood-fueled rampage of murder and gore, then the warp around that planet will be affected in a similar manner. It's not something that you can see. It is a parallel, not perpendicular dimension. But it is changing. To expose oneself to the warp for any period of time invites certain death outside of the most iron-willed of individuals. And to stare into it will drive one mad. Much like the open seas, things dwell in the warp. Whether these beings were always there and were just emboldened by the carnage of the galaxy, we can only speculate at. At a time, you could say it was more calm. But a certain faction's galactic war in heaven didn't do it any favors. Now the warp is turbulent, and its realms belong to a pantheon of gods known simply as Chaos. The forces of chaos are beings that serve directly under their patron deity. There are 4 current gods of chaos at the moment: Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. Each of them represent various facets of and emotions of sentient species and play a great game against one another for total control over their realms. Interestingly enough, while their disciples have physical forms we can understand, the chaos gods do not have a physical visual that you can perceive in reality. So while there are tons of fantastic fan art, we do not know what they truly look like.
On the few occasions where they try to channel themselves into certain host, like the aforementioned surfer dude, Angron, that demon primarch, once had a moment in a series called The Ark of Omens, where he was triggered so much that the god of battle himself, Khorne, channeled his power into him, basically possessing him, and made him split the planet in half, alongside a Grey Knight, if I remember correctly. It was crazy, but how did that physically manifest? Well, he got more red. It is one of those events in 40k where like scale creep becomes freaking insane, like similarly to freaking Dragon Ball with transformations, except that here, Games Workshop still goes out of their way to try to truly avoid really depicting how the Chaos Guards will look like, but we can always just assume that they do have some of the features of the avatar, so yeah.
though they are conveniently color-coded. Khorne is the god of blood and murder, carnage and slaughter. He is the one who is most powered by the wholesale killing of any living thing. For Khorne cares not from where the blood flows. With a sacred number of 8, he is the lord of all things involving killing and blood and gore. The champions are extremely strong as well, with monumental muscles and extremely large weapons. A true analog to Khorne would be his greater demon, the Bloodthirster, an enormous muscle-bound flying devil with an axe so large it splits tanks in a single swing. They move into battle with armor of brass adorned by the skulls of their foes and pools of freshly spilt blood. This may appear to be quite frightening, of course, demonic, one might say. But in the world of chaos, all emotions feed one of these gods in one way or another. If you were to define Khorne with single words, you would use blood, carnage, murder, skulls. But you'd be missing out on important ones like strength, honor, prowess, courage, and skill. Khorne is not just about the wholesale slaughter of people. He is about the honor and power of martial combat. The true strength there is in besting someone in physical strength and skill. Of course, a murderer would be someone who would feed Khorne, but a soldier could feed Khorne. A martial artist or professional fighter could feed Khorne. A warrior, good or bad, feeds Khorne. A diplomat does not. A premier soldier does. A GoFundMe does not. This is what leads many mortals down the path of Khorne, for he will bless those that bring him enough skulls. And in a world this destructive, there are many ways to reap a high tally for him.
Scarbrand understands why Khorne hates the US healthcare system, because it forces people to do GoFundMe and never actual enter battle. Oh my god.
Prepare the Dreadclaws and unchain the Mad Ones. Glorious battle awaits us today, for the world below has refused to surrender. Let us descend upon them with fury and rage, giving no quarter and sparing only those warriors who fight well enough to earn a place amongst us. As to the rest, their lives and possessions are ours, but their skulls are for Khorne. Normally, if I ever want to explain Khorne, I just kind of show them this clip.
I'd never stab you in the back, Shepard. Warriors like you and me, straight to the face.
Moving on, Tzeentch is the second god, the god of trickery and mischief, the changer of ways, the great conspirator and the architect of fate. With a sacred number of 9, Tzeentch is truly the god of change in all of its forms, but there is an obvious undercurrent of mischief and cunning. Tzeentch is such a liar that his pants have gone thermonuclear.
No!
Where the f is it?
His favorite pastime is asking questions that have no answers while simultaneously making up answers on the spot to a question he didn't ask.
Have you ever had a dream
Of course.
that you want him to do you so much you could do anything?
He is such a conniving little bastard that every emotion of lying, of scheming, of trickery is a direct way to help feed him. An unfaithful partner, a politician, a spy. All these people feed Tzeentch in one way or another, and it doesn't matter if the intentions are good. Acceptance does not feed Tzeentch. Change does. Tzeentch doesn't care about your facts. He only wants opinions. Because he represents change, he also represents hope, though. Schemes are not always bad.
Facts don't care about your feelings. We operate on logic. Says Tzeentch. Did you just say logic? How about you try debating me only using your gut feeling? Bruh!
And even the hope to make a better tomorrow is the change he seeks. Because he is the architect of fate and the mastery of sorcery, his presence is purely unknowable. Every depiction of a Tzeentchian demon contains more eyes than are necessary and more mouths than I know what to do with. It is a biblically accurate angel if the angel gaslit you into thinking birds are government drones.
That's good.
But are they?
That's
the creatures
good.
at his disposal adorn themselves with the knowledge of sorceries and the unknown, all to provide a mind-crushing experience. Fighting demons from outside of our reality is difficult enough, but fighting demons from unreality, purposely attempting to trick you, is a whole new thing entirely. And that is before we even get started on the gigantic bird of sorcery you're going to need to face.
Yeah, Space Marines 2 did a good depiction of Tzeentch demons. That was very, very well done. Granted, we already had that in Total Warhammer, but the whole boss battle to the trickery of the whole, oh my god, we thought that we actually killed the boss, but no, it was just a random dude who had a whole different purpose, to which, okay, I had a lot of issues with the kind of like tonal shift of Space Marine 2 in terms of his story, because I expected more from it. I'm not saying that it was bad, but with the setup I expected more, which of course they're going to do more with the upcoming game that they already have confirmed. But thematically speaking, it's very on point of Tzeentch to just show up out of nowhere and start doing a lot of hullabaloo.
Do not ask which creature screams in the night. Do not question who waits for you in the shadow. It is my cry that wakes you in the night, and my body that crouches in the shadow.
Ew.
I am Tzeentch, and you are the puppet that dances to my tune. Third of the Chaos Gods is the one of acceptance of rot and pestilence, the grandfather himself, Papa Nurgle.
You're
Nurgle
fat.
is the exact
Accept it.
opposite of Tzeentch. Where Tzeentch believes in change and hope for a future, Nurgle believes in stagnation and the end of everything. At one point or another, we will all decay. We will all rot, and we will all end. And with a sacred number of 7, every single thing, pestilence, boil, and everything in between, comes under the great shadow and girth of Nurgle himself. For Nurgle, the plight of mortals is his fear and wine. And no matter how solid life might be, everything will decay in the end. In the creation of life, there must be an end to that life. And nobody has more creations to end lives than Grandfather Nurgle himself. Every boil, every blemish, every pus-filled wound and disease, every rot and every plague is kept and concocted by Nurgle. This humorously keeps Nurgle as a jovial god. He is full of life and laughter, and by creating as many diseases as he possibly can, he shares that joy with mortals. I mean,
well, except for his dude, Mortarion, another demon Primarch. He isn't very jovial, but he's kind of forced to deal with Nurgle's bullshit. But yeah, the dude is on a constant he frowns more than Batman. But in effect, if you ever see him smile, run.
His envoy is the Great Unclean One. And look at how happy he is. And there's a lot of him to love. A fear of death in general is feeding Nurgle. All disease makes him stronger, but to pray for salvation for a wounded loved one is to feed Nurgle. The timeless and inevitable fear that one day you will rot and decay is what gives him strength. The Peloton won't feed Nurgle. Licking the doorknob on a public bathroom certainly does. However, should you embrace your grandfather's gifts, you may find an end to your pain. Maybe. All mortal followers of the Chaos Gods found themselves there in one way or another. Either through the direct...
Like, think about the thing that the Necrons did. If they encountered Nurgle, Nurgle would have given them immortality. But one that would live them with like a combination of measles, HIV, and COVID just bundled in one nasty package to live with for all eternity and never be cured. But they will live, but at what cost?
Worship or the slow corrupting of their souls. But those that take Nurgle's gifts and embrace the decay of their bodies may end up being chosen among his few as a faithful servant. In doing so, you will be free of the pain caused by Nurgle's ailments, and you may even find yourself just as jovial and happy as he is. Maybe. His enemies shall wither and die. His allies shall wither and die. The universe and all within it shall wither and die. And when the great corruption has settled over the land and permeated the very foundations of reality itself, then shall the Lord of all rise from the rot and ruin, spread his arms wide to reclaim all of his dutiful children. Those were the three major chaos gods for a very long time, emboldened by war and death on a galactic scale, ever present, but now fat on the suffering of a galaxy. One race, for a while, was able to elude the pull of chaos, an advanced race of psychically attuned aliens whose master over the physical world was so strong that chaos could not glean from them the morsels of power they once had. Or so they couldn't. Not for a long while. 60 million years ago, in an attempt to combat the Necrons in Catan, the old ones made a new species. One with innate power in the warp and the ability to harness it with a mastery that was unseen by so many others. A mastery so powerful, the Necrons retreated to sleep in order to wait it out. It was no longer a galaxy to be ruled by them, but instead begin the age of the... The Eldar are a race of pointed-eared humanoids that are all psychically attuned to the warp. If we're being meta here, these are space elves, and these elves ruled the galaxy in the time the Necrons went to sleep and humanity began to rise. The Eldar's empire was galaxy-wide and lasted for longer than any other galactic power that we know of. Their understanding of all things was exceptional. With every single one of them being psychers, they had the ability to master the warp and use it to their advantage. See, being a psyker is basically like being a wizard, or I guess in this case it's more of a sorcerer, since you are born with the gifts as opposed to learning them. In order to utilize your psychic abilities, however, you must then reach into the other dimension, into the warp, into hell for that power. So if you were to say, cast fireball, your mind
Lapis.
Reach into the warp, gather the strength to rewrite reality, to then cast fireball. Now, you might think to yourself, doesn't that mean if you are opening up a power to the warp, you may create a lot of risk to yourself because of all the horrible things we just talked about in the warp?
Yeah?
Yes. However, in Warhammer 40k, willpower is a real, tangible thing, in the sense that in its own right, it can be weaponized. Being strong of will means being strong of soul, and being strong of soul means you can resist the pull of the warp that much more.
Or just having both that and being extremely fucking weird. Into Kaldor Drago. Keep that name in mind.
A more inexperienced psyker opens up a hole into the warp that is large, and that hole widens to get more power, allowing evil things to get in. A powerful psyker is able to open a very small hole, but with immense force, to get the same amount of power with less risk. The Eldar are master psychers. Every single one of them can call upon the warp, and over millions of years they have perfected it so much so that they can weave structures out of it. In some species in the galaxy, they utilize the warp itself for interstellar travel. The Eldar ain't having any of that noise.
Nope.
How about we utilize a fancy alternative mode of travel that is substantially safer than the old ones created, called the webway? What about dying? Miss me with that. We no longer age. And if we do, we can just be reborn like that. Food, water,
cloning
materials,
themselves and
we
shit.
make things out of distilled warp essence itself. We sing unreality into cathedrals to dine in. What truly could the Eldari Empire possibly fear?
Themselves.
The Eldari Empire's biggest fear was themselves, with a society so perfect they wanted for naught, and this led them down dark and dangerous paths. When the base functions of society are no longer a problem for you, you tend to experiment.
Overindulge.
Perhaps the medium rare steak on your plate would be better if it was elf meat. Hey, I'm not saying we should make cannibalism legal, but like, what's the issue with a little taste?
They went from doing those whole, what are they called? That that weird fetish thing that some have where they will eat sushi off of people's bodies. Yeah, they went from that to being like, no, we don't want the sushi on top, just the body.
Violent sports is one thing, but how come we don't do sports to the death? I mean, I'm just saying, like, if both participants are willing and clear about it, like, what really is the problem there, you know? Art is in the eye of the viewer, and what is considered art is completely up to the concept of one's own interest. A canvas adorned with the blood of a man wronged is truly the visual poetry that our society needs. Hedonism. With a slow and consistent hedonism, the Eldar slid backwards into debauchery of the sort I cannot discuss on this YouTube video.
Debauchery!
Murder on stage, delicacies and drugs distilled from one another, the trade of slaves and concubines, and much worse. The Eldar physiology has their emotions heightened, and they can feel more than a human does. So while it can provide lows of pure despair, it can also provide greater highs than you have ever known. And swinging between the two of them was the Eldar game. The Warp took notice of this heavily, and it began to react. On a galactic scale, the debauchery and the hedonism of the Eldar race caused levels of warp storm so pronounced and so volatile that it cut off interstellar travel for all those who used it. Communications between planets was removed, and a nightmarish era of old night began. This continued for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. The Eldar all but removed from the problems being caused as they entered heights of more and more ecstasy. They needed more and more and more. Nothing was ever enough. More murder, more torture. It's art, it's delicacies, it's life. This silence offends Slaanesh.
Oh shit. That was a really good delivery, especially with the Mechanica soundtrack in the background. Great build-up, extremely well executed.
Slaanesh, the prince of pleasure, she who thirsts, the god of unspeakable excess, is our fourth chaos god with the sacred number of 6 adorning their title. Slaanesh is a bit of a tricky one.
Yeah, you could say that, especially with the art, which whomever did this understood the assignment. You have a gaping mouth for a belly, you have some cables on every single appendages, horns, knives protruding. One of the titties is smoking Rifa. Drukhari crystal meth, I suppose, and everything just wants to feel sensual but also edgy and nasty. Yeah, they did good.
Because with our other 3 Chaos Gods, there was a certain understanding of human emotions and desires. But for Slaanesh, that desire is how they get their power. The words to be used would be decadence, pleasure, perfection, passion, excess, and many others. The pursuit of more.
Yeah, the never-ending pursuit for perfection is one that is very apparent in some 40k books. There would be the example of like Lucius the Eternal, who is a sword master. He belonged to the Emperor's Children, one of the original legions of the Emperor that defected to Chaos, and his love for the blade was very insane. Like, it was very good. But there came a certain point where that extended to him starting to do a lot of fucky-wucky things. And that's the thing, right? You can go from just being like an amateur enthusiast of like fencing in 40k and just trying to be one with the blade, which doesn't just mean that you are owning your skills to becoming better. No. It means that you need to infuse the blade into your wrist. And what if that isn't enough? What if that doesn't satisfy you? How about every single extremities are adorned with blade? Every inch of your person is fused with something edgy. So you go from being an amateur liker of fencing to becoming a straight up Beyblade. And you can bet your ass that Slaanesh loves
the want to do more, experience more, become more. That's what gives Slaanesh their gifts. A lot of people believe that Slaanesh is something that originates with sex. Specifically,
Yeah.
and it makes sense why they assumed that. The visuals of Slaanesh patrons are all very lithe and sexual, but they are also intentionally androgynous to appear attractive to a variety of
Gay
industries.
shit imaginable.
However, to think that Slaanesh specifically derives from sex would be mistaken. While it is true that a lot of humanity's actions can relate to getting laid, and Slaanesh is the dark prince of desire, it's more on the lines of feeling an excess of an emotion. It is
I very much hate when that happens too. When Jesus suddenly shows up and tells you to do a trick on it. Hey yo, what the fuck?
excessive touch and scent and desire, and a lot of that has to do with sex. That's why it looks like sex, but it's more than just that. A patron of the
crustaceans.
arts may feed Slaanesh, one that aspires to become the perfect chef or master of their craft, and the sheer pursuit of that alone will feed Slaanesh. Whiplash is Slaanesh's absolute favorite film. Videos where
Never
people
satisfied.
beat Elden Ring on a
Never
dance
a good
pad
job.
feed Slaanesh.
There are no two words in the English language more harmful
Then good
than
job.
good job.
But is there a line?
But is there a line?
No, man.
This also
I
moves
fucking
to the
love this movie.
concept of feeling. Sensation is a majorly Slaanesh-coded thing. It might start off feeling good, but then you get to play around a little bit, you know? You play with a little bit of pain. Light pain might not be enough, so you might want more. Or inflicting the pain could be your jam. Music can increase to volumes that may hurt your ears, and even then that might not be enough.
What the hell is this? Merceball Pulse Demon. Merceball Pulse Demon. What in tarnation?
What the hell is even that?
For a moment that thing started, it kind of felt to me like it was going to be what they call the clown, the clown band that tends to play music in their car. Clown core, you know, with the sound Earth, for example. I was halfway hoping for it to turn a little bit more melodic, but it never did. It felt like that meme of the friends of Peppa Pig going like, we don't listen to children's music. No, no, no. What do you like to listen to? Mine's very grown up. Freaking Drukhari ear grape starts playing.
More. You must have
More.
Many of the disciples of Slaanesh carry a demonic form in their lithe grace. The Keeper of Secrets is his chosen envoy, and their movements are a blur of dance and pain, with an aura all the more fatal. They dance and sing, but there's always a form of malice behind every action they take. An alluring gaze that will pull you in right before the demonic entity can crush you in that grip. Slaanesh's palace has 6 layers surrounding it, and one of them is the excess of gluttony, where the participant finds themselves in a beautiful banquet full of the most delicious foods imaginable. Tables of delicacies and rivers of wine tempt the user to such a degree that they cannot stop stuffing their face, unaware that the things they are eating are very vaguely familiar meat. If one does not see themselves drowning in the river of wine, they may soon fill their bodies up so much that they cease to function and fall over, becoming part of the banquet,
themselves. Oof.
That is one of these 6 layers of Slaanesh's palace.
It is crazy of a switcheroo where you will see something like a Nurgle and assume that the most bountiful looking of the Chaos Guards, you know, in terms of girth, is the one who is kind of stuck with gluttony. But no, Grandpapa Nurgle is just content with his girth. He's fat and he knows it. He sits on the sofa at 7 PM watching sport and goes amateur, whereas Slaanesh urges you to keep on trying for the Olympics until you break every single bones of your body.
This was the ecstasy that the Eldar civilization indulged in for millennia, and did so at a monumental scale that they created a god from it. Find pleasure in every moment, indulge in every whim, let lesser races feel the burden of their crude lives. We are beyond such concerns or worries. Every power is ours to use, every sensation ours to experience. We are truly masters of the galaxy, and all others exist only to satisfy our curiosities. We have earned our position of power. Let us forever taste the fruits of such achievement. Time itself is ours to command. We are eternal.
You can also say that. Holy shit. If you did it one sentence to describe the birth of Slaanesh, the gang goons succumb, Satan.
With the birth of Slaanesh, the Eldari Empire ceased to be. A catastrophic event so horrible that the warp ripped a hole permanently in our reality. A fissure forever known as the Eye of Terror. With the sudden inhalation of this god's largest breath, the Eldari souls are a currency to be now collected by she who thirsts. Trillions of Eldar died in an instant. Slaanesh gorging on their souls to satisfy his palate. 99.9% of their entire species died, and the rest are doomed to a fate worse than death. For Slaanesh now stakes a claim on each and every Eldar soul. From the moment they pass on, an eternity of torment awaits them. The remaining Eldar devote their entire lives to stopping this eventuality. Their dying race so devoted to saving themselves from the Dark Prince. And
it's like a reverse Japan, which is kind of fitting in terms of like the hierarchy that the Eldaris tend to apply in certain, depending on certain factions. But like, you know, with the whole, we completely switched our image into becoming the fun-loving land of anime only. So forget about the centuries that led up to this event, okay? That never happened. Like, they truly kind of tried to pull that off, but yeah. Didn't play out exactly as they wanted.
And in doing so, have found very creative ways.
Oh yeah, the floating world.
Warhammer, the Craftworld Eldar are the main force of Eldar in the galaxy and represent the elf style that many think of when you think elves in space. Fantasy elves in space, not those elves. We'll get to them. A Craftworld is a monumentally large starship, the size of a continent, that acts as a form of flotilla. During the highest reaches of hedonism, many Eldar saw the demonic writing on the wall and began to try and seek asylum from their own debauchery. Those Eldar left on monumental craft worlds into the far reaches of the galaxy and saved themselves from Slaanesh's awakening. The main thing the Craftworld Eldar seek is to temper their minds and bodies in a way that will never allow them to slide back into their old ways. The representation they carry is that of a more feudal Japanese motif. Eldar follow paths as they age. The path of the warrior, the seer, the poet,
Bushido,
the diplomat, the bone singer, and so on. These paths are a strict code of conduct to hone the heightened Eldar psychology down a school of thought and action. And if it sounds a hell of a lot like Bushido, well, you're damn right. Here's a medal and a soul stone. Don't lose it or an eternity of torment awaits you. Going through these paths will allow you to take up not just a role in Eldar society, but keep your mind clear from the past worries that plagued them. Every Eldar is said to be a psyker, however, very few of them actually utilize their psychic powers for fear of tempting she who thirsts. A large amount of emphasis is also put on ancestors of the Eldar and learning from them the farther you go down a path. This can sometimes be seen by the large variety of jewels adoring the armor of Eldar. Those are called soul stones, the biggest middle finger to Slaanesh they can think of. See, when an Eldar dies, these stones act as a backup, and instead of their souls going to Slaanesh, they are then trapped and stored in this little stone. So when the Eldar say they commune with their ancestors, they literally do. Very literally, as the spirit and soul of generations before them are stored here. Often larger structures may contain vast amounts of soul stones, such as the Infinity Circuit in the Craftworld itself, allowing the souls of the dead to help power their enormous starship. The young do not desire the discipline of the path, but rather their curiosity drives them to try every fruit from the tree.
And
thus,
so the cycle
it is that
goes
so many take the path of wandering
again and again.
or the path of damnation in their first years of adulthood. And so the great tragedy of our kind is played out again and again as the number of our people shrink from generation
to generation.
These
from what book is that from? It sounds familiar. Is that from a book? Oh, no, that's from the Codex. That's the code. The quotes are from the Codex.
These paths, when completed, allow an Eldar to move to the next one, then the next one. However, since this is the grim darkness of the world, many of these paths rely on combat. The Eldar actually had gods at one point. Cain, Vol, Isha, Asaryan, and so on. These gods are aspects of the Eldar pantheon, and while many were killed in Slaanesh's creation, their teachings live on. For some, the strongest devotion to the Eldar gods is to join the Aspect Warriors and embody the wrath of Cain.
He tried dodging that laughing god pronunciation, huh? We'll get to it eventually.
God of War. While Guardians of the Eldar Craftworlds are more akin to a trained militia, the Aspect Warriors embody a particular variant of the path. Each are led by a Phoenix Lord, a name passed down from generations and embodying the souls of prior Phoenix Lords with each new one. The Howling Banshees led by Jane Zor, Fugan and his Fire Dragons, Valkaroth and his Swooping Hawks, or Malgan Ra and his Dark Reapers. Each Aspect Shrine carries with it the Eldar way of war. Fast, hard-hitting, and incredibly tricksy, for they do not have the numbers to fight in any other way. The Craftworld Eldar show how mangled an empire can be by their own actions. They once ruled the galaxy in an honest, non-hyperbolic way, but in the end, they were bested by themselves, and their most prominent remnants are forced to drift aimlessly through the galaxy, trying to save their species from extinction and resist the temptations of she who thirsts. But for some, the party
just started, baby!
Within the webway is the city of
Drukhari.
This dark city once existed as a port in the webway that allowed for ease of transport for the Eldar between its various domains. The significance of this city meant that it needed to be a bit more of a neutral territory outside of the jurisdiction of general Eldar law, and therefore it was allowed to self-govern. This did not go well. The Dark City became the hideaway for all manner of sin. The Eldar race slipped into debauchery on a galactic scale that it birthed a god, and this was the city you went to when that wasn't enough for you. The convenience of being so deep within the webway was that it exists as a blind spot to the horrors of the warp. So while the rest of the Eldar fled the downfall of their species, Kamara kept partying.
They straight up went like, all right, gentlemen, let's go slavery. No cap. They went straight there.
When Slaanesh was birthed, they were saved the worst of it, thanks to them being nice and neatly tucked away inside the webway. But only somewhat. The Dark Prince did not have a grip around their soul, but the tiniest pinky finger, and they were still pulling. But due to their excess hedonism, they found a solution to this problem. If they tormented others, they could temporarily rejuvenate their souls and continue to cheat their inevitable death by placating the Prince of Pleasure. And if they kept this up on the regular, they could effectively become immortal. Thus, the Drukhari were born. Unlike the more stoic elves you see in works of fiction, the Drukhari themselves exist as a sort of analog of the more grim and fiendish elves you find in Norse and European mythology. The Drukhari are soul vampires, but the more basic means to feed are hardly enough to keep them going. This desire to feed is known as the thirst, and to quench it effectively, they have mastered the art of biotechnology and dark sciences to really juice themselves up on the crispy soul sprite from the vending machine called the Galaxy. The majority of Drukhari act as pirates and raiders and slavers. They go into our physical reality and drag people back to Khorne to commit atrocities that go beyond any imaginative torture a human can think of.
The other day, I was recommended, funnily enough, a video on the llamas with hats, an animation series that I did not know even had a continuation, but it's apparently very long, and there's even an epilogue that I was actually also requested to check out, so I will do that eventually. But regardless of that, in one episode, we're dealing with the main offender here, Carl, who, through his demonic ways, manages to turn people into furniture. More specifically, a chair made out of human skin, if not just straight up faces. Now, the thing is that Drukharis do the very same thing. However, unlike Carl, the people who they murder are still very much alive. That's the extent of their technology. They have managed to weaponize pain on other people while maintaining them still very much living, extending that pain so to feed Slaanesh instead of themselves. It is fucking wild. If you get captured by Drukhari, do the opposite of what a higher echelon human will tell you to do.
You should treat yourself now.
The opposite of that, okay?
The Drukhari are organized in various groups throughout the Dark City to accomplish this in a more organized and extremely brutal way. The Cabals act as the main warriors of the city, led by their archons. Witches and succubi act as entertainment for Khorne in gladiatorial arenas, and the flesh-crafting homunculus keep the Drukhari alive and discover ever increasingly more painful ways to torment their ever increasingly large supply of slaves they are brought. The Dark Eldar see the other inhabitants of the galaxy as little more than cattle. Livestock that can be brought to bay or slaughtered at any time. Their fodder, however, is not meat and muscle, but the anguish and despair of the weak. The Dark Eldar do indeed drink blood, but also tears, and most sustaining of all, the raw essence of pain they wring out of their captives. The truth of the matter is that Drukhari sustain themselves on the suffering of others, not just morally, but physically. Khorne is a city rife with backstabbing schemes and murder. It is the worst back alleys of the worst ghettos at the best of times.
Fucking Birmingham here. This place is a shithole.
Nothing is more horrifying to a Drukhari than death, for death will see them in the talons of Slaanesh for an eternity of torment. So they do everything they can to stop this. The homunculi covens regrow dead members from pieces of flesh as bargaining chips. The succubi create grisly gladiatorial spectacles that literally rejuvenate the audience members as captives are murdered for sport. To be captured by the Drukhari is one of, if not the worst fate imaginable in the world of Warhammer 40k. In a universe built on war crimes, they are the most debased war crimers of all time.
Of war crimers.
And sacrificed in the gladiatorial arenas is a blessing, for you have escaped the fate of being in the flesh smiths control group, or being turned into a living and breathing piece of furniture for an Archon's quarters. In a cruel twist of fate, a newly born Drukhari does not arrive into this world loving torture. It is something they must grow to love. Grow to appreciate the suffering of other beings in order to survive in the world they have been brought into. If they
That's one of the things that that very much makes me hate 40k sometimes. When you think deeper about it, is that there are kids in this. It's one of the prospects that we tend to forget about. Like, you know how in a game like GTA, one of the reasons as to why we often can like allow ourselves to do the most heinous things is that, well, the game has done that for us removing children from the equation. Occasionally, of course, you have games like Skyrim that just straight up provoke you into freaking WWE body slam the kid like The Undertaker, but granted, unless you mod the games, you're usually not allowed to do that. But 40k books would at time go in deep details about this, and it's like, ooh, I did not need to know about the birth of this person or the struggle that they went through as children. This is not empathy that you're reaching for. This is just disgust that you're trying to invoke at me, and it worked.
They succeed, they become some of the worst monsters in the known galaxy. A dark reflection to the Craftworlders and a taste of what Eldar society was like before the fall. If they do not succeed, they must find purchase elsewhere. Often those will join smaller parts of Eldar society like the Exodites or the Harlequins. Exodites believe in a pre-industrial variant of their society, often retreating to more lush worlds to ride dinosaurs and live off the land. Prehistoric style that I would normally laugh at if they weren't riding dinosaurs like ballers. The Harlequin dancing troupe are a subsect of Eldar that are more than just a little strange. A carnival of dancing jesters that serve the Eldar laughing god of Khorne.
Khorne.
They arrive.
Khorne. Okay, I'm sorry for saying the Haktur me. That was not my intent. Freudian slip, it just came out.
I've never when expected and leave just as quickly. Blurs of light carry their footsteps as they dance their foes into a grave. Combat is just as much of a joke as it is a play on bloody murder. They travel and aid many other Eldar and sometimes even humanity for reasons we can never understand. Perhaps one day we would have, were they not stripped of their army book and folded into the Eldari Codex. So I suppose it'll have to stay a mystery, or maybe it was one of Khorne's master plans to get back at she who thirsts and save their species.
Understanding, what the fuck is that?
No, perhaps it was all a sick and practical joke to Khorne, and he would just find it very funny to watch me fumble the discussion of one human on a tiny blue planet across the galaxy.
Speaking of which.
Speaking of.
Okay, gentlemen, ladies. Alright, so in a twist, I think that we are going to keep this one here. I know, this is not me trying to be a dick. It is simply because I do believe that it serves a better format for me to stay energetic when I react to these things, and especially given that the next part is likely going to be solely focused on humanity. We haven't really talked about the orcs yet. Perhaps we're gonna dive into that. Armageddon, perhaps a bit more. But it's definitely going to be human-centric. And there are a shit ton of factions and a lot of things that we could be talking about. So I'm gonna wait a little bit before we get into that one. That being said, guys, this is a monumental video on his part. I'm very glad that he decided to do this again, because I, like many others, might have been a bit too busy to, as I said in the start, stay ashore with things. So to get like a primer of shit, I want to make a Primarch joke here, to the 40k universe once more is always a great and delightful thing. That being said, please do make sure to go and subscribe to the Bricky main channel, of course his second channel as well, if you want to see some gameplay there. And of course, feel free to like and also subscribe on this one as well. That being said, stay tuned for part 2, will be coming out very soon, and I see you guys in the next one. Have a great day.